Lee Daniels has a history of exploring human suffering in his films, but with The Deliverance, he steps into the horror genre for the first time. However, this Netflix film feels more at home as a melodrama than in the supernatural, especially because the terror seeps in almost 40 minutes after the film starts. Still, it weaves a pretty dark story where the hold-on faith severely struggles against the overwhelming despair of life. Like many horror movies, The Deliverance is really about the consequences of unresolved trauma. It's loosely adapted from the true story of Latoya Ammon into a thoughtful domestic drama about a matriarch who struggles with family responsibilities, alcoholism, and a strained relationship with her mother. Even if the story explores the hauntings of the terror that lurks in the basement, it actually uses it to draw out lessons in faith. Daniel's attention to detail works wonders for this horror drama, where he seems to pour his heart into telling the story of a black daughter and a white mother struggling against poverty, the challenges of a biracial family, and their complex relationship with faith. For those who are undecided or skeptical about this real-life story-based horror film, well, we're here to give you the gist of the film, alongside serving it with a scoop of how the true incident went down. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss The Deliverance. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Deliverance starts with a strong glimpse into Ebony's troubled family life. Ebony's life has been filled with challenges for as long as she can remember, and things only get worse after her divorce, when she moves to Pittsburgh with her 3 kids and her mom. The Deliverance starts by showing us a family already in turmoil, with Ebony struggling to make ends meet for her family, as her kid's father is completely out of the picture. There's also a hint that she has a criminal record, which is entirely possible with Ebony's anger issues. Her oldest son, Nate, tries his best to look after his younger siblings, Shantae and Andre, but the stress at home becomes unbearable even for him. To make matters worse, Ebony's mom, Berta, has moved in with them to help her daughter take care of the kids. Berta has found comfort in the church after a tough life, but that doesn't exactly ease the strain in the household. The friction among all of them is pretty clear from the first minute of the film, with Ebony running a strict home without being open to any criticism from anyone. Ebony's children are also having a hard time at school, constantly dealing with threats from neighborhood kids, who miss no chance to bully them. When she sees the blood dripping from the back of Nate's head, Ebony takes matters into her own hands, fighting back by knocking out her kid's bully, which leads Shantae to worry that her mom might end up back in prison. We also learn that Ebony once had a serious drinking problem, making it hard to know whether what she's experiencing is real or not. As it turns out, the only thing that's keeping her from reeling back into the comfort of alcoholism is the Child Protective Service officer named Cynthia always tailing her. Even her children don't like their mom's drinking habit, to the point that Nate was driven to hide Ebony's booze along with the money that his father had sent him. Meanwhile, the youngest child, Andre, talks to himself all the time, and instead of dealing with it, Ebony simply asks him to shut up. Somehow, she seems very disconnected from her kids, while also keeping a tight grip on their lives. At this point, it's clear that the family is tired of being broke all the time, with Ebony barely being able to put food on the table. So when her mom asks her if she's drinking again, Ebony inherently snaps, leading to a heated fight with Berta. She also doesn't like her mother's newfound obsession with God and strongly dismisses her request to take the kids to church. But that doesn't mean Ebony and Berta do not love each other. The warmth in their bittersweet relationship is seen when Berta goes to the clinic for her routine chemotherapy and learns that Ebony has been secretly paying for her treatment for over a year. Not just that, even while struggling to pay for basic amenities, Ebony throws a party for Shantae on her birthday and gives her a fancy phone. In a way, you could see how they all fit together, despite being completely dysfunctional. But still, the family cannot seem to catch a break with the strange occurrences in their house. The Child Protection Services do not believe in ghosts or demons. At the beginning, the horror elements seem pretty minor, mainly because Ebony is overwhelmed with trying to make sense of her life, and the chaos around her only adds to the confusion. When strange marks appear on Shantae's body, Ebony is still grappling with disappointment over how she handled the fight with Nate, when he questions his mother about the money being missing from his wardrobe. But Nate has been cashing in money orders from his dad so he can finally save up and move out and leave the mess behind. This leads to a heated argument between them as Nate's words cut Ebony deeply, and she reacts by hitting him, which leads to little Andre getting hurt while trying to break up the fight. In that moment, Ebony takes a hard look at herself and pleads with Nate that his family needs him. On the next day, their child services officer Cynthia shows up at the door. Ebony's unstable state of mind doesn't help her case with Cynthia, who's already skeptical of her parenting and seems eager to catch her making mistakes. She informs Ebony that the children's dad had previously filed legal complaints against her, accusing her of running an abusive household. By this point, viewers might believe the accusations against Ebony, as she has accidentally injured her kids several times, causing noticeable bruises. But Ebony insists she doesn't hit her children, and claims their dad is just trying to get full custody by making false complaints. Unfortunately, Cynthia is not convinced and tells Ebony that the local school has raised concerns about her kid's increasingly erratic behavior. Before leaving the house, Cynthia warns Ebony that she needs to get her act together and stop drinking. Meanwhile, an unknown woman is sitting in a car outside and taking photos of the scene. The horror of the film finally seeps in through Ebony's alcoholism. By Shantae's birthday, it seems like the family tensions have eased. However, things quickly take a turn when Andre is found inside the basement. Upon asking, he said his imaginary friend Trey told him to go there. But later, Ebony finds him out of bed again, standing alone in a corner at the party, facing the wall. Ebony, who has clearly had too much to drink, sends Andre back to bed without giving it too much thought. After the party ends, Ebony crawls into her bed and has trouble sleeping with the constant thudding noise coming from her children's room. So she loses her calm and rushes into his room with a baseball bat in hand. Hearing the noise, Berta finds all three kids huddled in a corner, terrified, while their mother stood dazed in the middle of the room. The wall was completely smashed through, with Ebony holding the baseball bat and covered in pieces of debris. The sight convinces Berta that Ebony was abusing the children, especially after Andre claimed that she had pinned them against the wall. But Ebony seems to be in some kind of trance and refuses to accept their allegations, stating that she does not remember what happened to them in the first place. The next day at school, things take a bizarre turn when the kids start behaving completely deranged. Nate laughs uncontrollably during a lesson about racism and AIDS. Shantae bleeds profusely down her legs, causing a scene at the auditorium, frightening everyone. Meanwhile, Andre defecates in the class and throws his feces at his teacher. Next thing we know, Ebony is called out of work to find all three kids in the hospital, but the nurses report that the tests show nothing is physically wrong with them. When she presses the doctor to check them properly, it baffles her that the doctor is more focused on the kids' bruises and the state of their home life. Finally, Berta meddles to keep her daughter from doing something rash, and on her way back, she warns Ebony to get her shit together if she wants to keep her children. But on the same night, something really strange happens, as Ebony was giving Andre a bath. When she goes away from the bathroom to pick up a call, Nate comes to the washroom and proceeds to drown his brother in the bathtub. Following this, when Ebony tries with all her might to stop Nate, he seems to be in a trance and cannot hear his mother's cries. After finally getting him away, Ebony hugs Andre in a petrified state, while Nate cries about not knowing what had gotten into him. In the next scene, Cynthia pays them a visit. Frustrated and scared, Ebony tries to convince her that something more sinister is at play, but Cynthia, having heard about the kid's condition, opens up about losing her own child in an accident years ago, and tells Ebony that her lack of appreciation for her children makes her sick to her stomach, insisting that she needs to get her life in order before her children are taken away from her. The house has a history of horror. The next day, as Ebony leaves a bar, she encounters the same woman she saw taking photos of her house earlier, and is surprised when the woman introduces herself as Bernice, a reverend. Bernice claims that apparently Jesus had sent her to help Ebony because of her house's troubling history. As they sat down for a chat, Bernice explained that the entire property is haunted by demonic spirits. Apparently, the house has a dark history of harboring demons. Bernice recounts her past experience with the house, where she failed to confront a demon when it was owned by a family from her church. She tells Ebony about the previous occupants of the house, who had just bought their first home and were extremely happy before they lost everything when a demon possessed their son. When the children acted strangely, with doctors unable to find any physical issues, Bernice knew something evil was involved, so she tried to deliver the boy from the clutches of the evil present in the house, but sadly the boy died. Over time, the disturbances spread from person to person, eventually causing the entire family to turn on each other. The demon then took over the boy's mother, leading her to kill her husband and daughter before killing herself. The connection becomes even more unsettling for Ebony when she learns that the boy's name was Trey, the same name as Andre's new imaginary friend who kept leading him to the basement. But even with the clear signs of her house being haunted, Ebony thinks it all sounds ridiculous and leaves. But when Ebony arrives at home, she finds nothing but chaos while she was away. The demon in the basement killed Alberta, who happened to be the only God-fearing person in the family. After seeing her mother's cross burnt, Ebony wastes no time and quickly packs the kids into the car to drive away. As they're on the road, Andre suddenly accuses her of causing her mother's death, with his eyes turning a disturbing shade of black. This sight drives Ebony mad, and she narrowly avoids a car accident. When she walks into a bar seeking help, strangers who open the car door are met with terrified kids, leading Ebony to be sectioned, and the children taken to the hospital. Because her blood tests reveal traces of alcohol, it gives the state grounds to remove her children from her care. However, Cynthia was at the hospital when the nurses reported that Andre was vomiting colored liquid and speaking in a language they didn't understand. She then talks to Andre, who starts behaving like something out of The Exorcist, breaking free from his restraints and crawling up the walls. This eerie sight is enough to convince Cynthia that Ebony was not lying about her family being tormented by dark forces, and by the time the doctors come to check in on Andre, Ebony had already sneaked into the hospital and taken Andre with her. How does Ebony save her children? With her mother gone and no one else to turn to, Ebony relies entirely on Bernice, who seems to be the only one aware of what's happening to her children. When Bernice asks her to regain her faith, Ebony mentions how she has always lived in a world of transactional relationships, never knowing unconditional love, so the idea of God's love has never felt real to her. Now, as her own strength is diminishing, after dealing with an overwhelming sense of loss, Ebony decides to open herself up to faith for the first time, with Bernice guiding her through the process. This is when we find out that Ebony was raped by a man that her mother had brought into the house. Following this, we learn that Bernice wants to perform a deliverance on Andre, which is a method that fully relies on her faith rather than traditional exorcism rituals. Once they get to the house, Bernice straps Andre to a chair and insists Ebony should tap into the faith she once had. Despite Bernice's warnings not to be swayed by anything the demon might do or say, the demon takes on the horrifying form of Alberta once the ritual begins. It's devastating for Ebony to hear the cruel words coming from this twisted version of her mother. Yet, Ebony doesn't give in to the pain. When the holy water does not completely banish it, this demonic Berta escapes and starts wreaking havoc throughout the house. Meanwhile, the other kids, now at a convent school, are also suffering physically from the demon's influence. Even though Bernice holds on with all her might, she finds herself overpowered by the demon. Turns out she was right in her initial assessment, because the evil was far stronger than she could handle. Eventually, the demon returns to its true form as Andre and kills Bernice, but not before she warns Ebony about not losing her faith. To finish the deliverance, it all comes down to Ebony's faith, holy water, and her determination. After Bernice is dead, the demon escalates its attacks, determined to shatter Ebony's spirit. In the final confrontation in the basement, Ebony faces off against the demon-possessed Andre. The demon tries to deceive Ebony by pretending it has released Andre and preys on her insecurities, suggesting that no one truly loves her. It even transforms into a version of Ebony, accusing her of being the source of all their problems. But the demon failed to realize that Ebony's struggles have only strengthened her resolve. When it tries to exploit her insecurities, Ebony finally acknowledges her mother's love rather than falling for the lies. So she closes her eyes and remembers Berta's advice, that even if she cannot speak to her mother, she can always talk to God. Embracing this connection, Ebony steps into a beam of light and reaches out to God, feeling his love for the very first time, which gives her the power to drive the demon away. At the end of the deliverance, the basement floor cracks open and the demon finally leaves Andre descending into the basement, which matches what Andre had referred to when he mentioned that Trey lived in a hole. The demon had also been tormenting Shantae and Nate, but when Ebony welcomed God into her heart, Shantae and Nate were miraculously healed. As the sun rises, the family's ordeal finally seems to be over as Andre is found crumpled in a corner, while Nate and Shantae appear to be free from the demon's grip. In the end, it seems like Bernice failed only because she did not have the personal connection to the situation. For Ebony, who stood to lose everything she cared about, this personal stake fueled her strength. Even if she was weak, Ebony's love for her family led her to reconnect with God, and after saving them from the brink of death, she found the strength to rebuild her life for their sake. In the aftermath, it seemed like Cynthia finally believed her and praised Ebony for her unwavering belief in God's will to keep her away from her children. 6 months later, Ebony finally takes her children and makes the right choice to move back to Philadelphia, with a newfound hope to improve her relationship with the kid's father. As for the house, it seems no one dared to go near it again. As the title card revealed, it had been completely destroyed in 2016. The ending of the Deliverance basically closes in on Ebony's incredible resilience as she overcomes trials that would easily break most people. Lee Daniels pretty much places God at the heart of her redemption, because just as the family endured a cycle of abuse, through Ebony they're now beginning a new cycle of healing with the help of their faith. With that being said, I think we can all agree that the Deliverance is practically a product of Amityville horror having a child with The Exorcist. Sure, it digs deep into the cycle of abuse and how it's passed on from one generation to the next, but when it comes to the horror part of the film, we get nothing more than a few tired cliches. But what do you guys think? Let us know about your thoughts in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.